I should have cleaned up my instrument.
That's all good. Welcome, everybody, to the first show of the GM support group. This is a new sort of talk show where a bunch of RPG game masters talk about the things that are ailing them and hopefully can provide some advice to new and old game masters alike. As this is our first session, we'll go ahead and give a few introductions. First, we have in your top left my old friend Rob. We met in college. Rob, if you want to go ahead and say hi, maybe tell the folks how long you've been a game master roughly, and your preferred system, if you have one.
Hello, everybody. As Steven said, my name's Rob. I've been a game master. Gosh, how old am I now? For roughly 9.5 years now, I guess. It's coming up to. And my preferred system, I've only played a couple actual D&D systems, but I think probably 5e is one of my preferred, probably my highest preferred, closely followed by Pathfinder. So,
All right, and in our top right we have Fizzer. Fizzer and I met at grad school. So go ahead and introduce yourself, and again give your preferred system if you have one.
Hi, I'm Fizzer. I've been running since about 2014, so 6 years. There are other things before that that are debatably role-playing games, but I'm going to stick with the things that make sense. And my preferred system is called the Cipher system, or Numenera. It's lesser known, but it's a flexible D20 system that has only real 3 stats to track instead of 6, like in 5e.
All right, nice. And in our bottom right, we have Walker. Walker and I also met in undergrad. He ran a game for Rob, myself, and a few of our other friends in senior year. Walker, go ahead and introduce yourself as well as your system of choice.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name's Walker. I've been DM for around about 8 years, and my favorite systems, I play a lot of 5e, but I'd say my absolute favorite is the Call of Cthulhu, because I enjoy much of those horror elements. So, yeah.
Awesome stuff. I'm Steven. I guess you could say I'm responsible for this show, kind of set everything up. I've been a GM for 11 and a half years. I guess that makes me the longest running one in the show today. My preferred system is D&D 5e, although I have run Star Trek Adventures, the Modifius 2D20 system. I think everybody here has played in at least one of my Star Trek games. And I have the honor of having played in a game run by all of these fine gentlemen, as well as having run a game for all of these fine gentlemen. So I will proudly stand behind each of them and their abilities as a GM. As we get into today's first show. Now, the way the show is going to work, we split everything up into 3 different segments. Our first segment will be behind the screen, so talking about all things that happen during a typical RPG. From how you handle rulings at the table to different ways of storytelling, which is actually going to be our first point of discussion today. Our second general section is away from the table, where we talk about everything that goes on before you even get to the game. Today's segment, we're going to be talking about finding your strengths as a game master. And our third section, I think, is going to be our most entertaining for the audience, as it will have a little bit of an interactive component. And that will, of course, be Roll Initiative. Today's Roll Initiative, we will be doing a 5-minute design challenge, where we split up into teams and create something in a sort of competition. And then we'll come back together and debate whose is better and give the audience a chance to decide for themselves. And as an added bonus, every time we do the 5-minute design challenge, I, at least, will be adding whatever is chosen as the winner to my game somewhere. So my players will have that to look forward to in the future.
I accept bribes.
Bribes are... Indeed. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with Behind the Screen. Our first topic for this show is alternative methods of storytelling. Now, traditional RPGs tend to have the players interacting with their world by asking questions, by encountering new locations. But the question for today is, are there different ways of telling your story than this traditional method? I, for one, I'll go ahead and get things started so we don't have an awkward pause of waiting for a volunteer. I, for one, have a idea for kind of incorporating video into dream sequences. That's certainly something that could be used. I think, when we describe dreams that a player character might have, we tend to show images of something, flashes of something else, sights, sounds. And while the imagination is an excellent tool, good use of video might be appropriate there as well, and that sort of thing might not necessarily take a long time. Anyone have any thoughts on the use of video? Do you think that's something you would use in your games, or does that seem a little much?
It feels significant to me, but I've used like a voice recorder thing on my phone, so I was able to record something like in an empty hallway or like get an echo effect.
That's good.
I've used that before. I've never tried video, and I'm not sure if I'd want to like spend the extra time learning it.
That's fair. Yeah, I think video could definitely be something useful, but if done well and in significant moderation, it would be all right. But it's not something I think I'd want to abuse. Anyone else have any thoughts on video or other?
It depends on, yeah. It kind of depends on the content of the video and how you're using it. I know for the dreams that I've used in some of the games I've done, I always try an interactive element to them to keep the player involved. So I'll have them do some kind of save or roll to.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, doing a pre-recorded bit may not work as well unless I want and then one based on what happens. So it'd be a little bit more work for me, but I like having.
Right. That interaction.
A bit of method loss there.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. You are cutting in and out a little bit, but I think we got the gist of what you're saying. With that interactive element, that sort of video might not work so well. I think it's a Discord sort of thing, but because your video is going in and out too. But yeah, I could see augmenting for that sort of dream, maybe not using video, but if it's just a vision that someone's having, like maybe characters having a premonition, it could be more useful. Rob, you haven't had a chance to chime in on the video. Don't necessarily have to, but if you have any other alternative storytelling methods, anything you want to chime in?
I was thinking about the video idea, and for me personally, I think I would actually probably take it a step or two farther in order for me to feel like it's worth adding, because I don't know if it really adds an incredible amount more than me bringing someone in a virtual tabletop sense, me bringing someone down to whispers and having a one-on-one with that person,
right?
Similar like how you and I did yesterday. Yeah. But in a sense of like the video, for them to like sit down and watch it, I think I would want to add some other elements of like actual like photographs, pictures, and like maybe even sounds and things added into that video, not just me sitting here in front of you saying the same thing I would say to you over a voice comm anyways, kind of thing.
That's kind of what I had in mind, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe add some of the elements of like different sounds that they hear if you're like of the scenery that you're describing, along with like different flashes that they may see of like these pictures in their mind, try to find something, but other than that, if it was just a video kind of like what we're doing here of me just saying what I was going to say anyways, I don't really think that necessarily brings a whole lot to the scene.
Yeah.
And then especially that's also kind of brings up the point of like the virtual tabletop sense in a more of a group session, like what we used to play back in undergrad, like with Walker. We used to go to his house and play all together and everything like that. I definitely don't necessarily think it would bring nearly as much. Like, I don't think I would ever want to incorporate like a video thing unless it was completely like behind the scenes, like at a like just a one-on-one DM type thing with the player, right? Because you're kind of all playing together. So I don't think it would bring a whole lot to the table than kind of just sitting there describing it in person, you know?
That does bring up another point. That video, you're absolutely right. That really only would work for Dreams, at least in a virtual tabletop setting, like most of us are using right now. But how do people feel about using completely or essentially using third-party knowledge in your storytelling? So giving your players information that their characters 100% wouldn't have, and whether that's telling the story at a particular moment from someone they've met's perspective, or showing the moment a monster enters the world. Does anyone have any strong feelings about that sort of storytelling?
I kind of love doing that, but I relegate it mostly to my like ongoing campaigns, instead of more piecemeal games, because in more ongoing campaigns I know what players are going to focus on more and what they're going to care about. I had a jungle-based campaign, I think back in 2016, and in that a young child NPC had a run-in with some scary monsters out in the jungle, and the player group saved that child, and I wrote a short form story from that child's perspective on what happened, as if he was telling an elder in the village what was happening. And I gave that out to my players. Not all of them read it. The ones that did definitely took to trying to protect that kid more, and eventually turned that kid into like a much more important NPC later on.
That's good.
But, yeah, from someone else's perspective, I think takes the players out of well, I'm interacting with this almost like I would in a video game, to no, there's like other people who can tell stories in this world.
Anyone else have any thoughts? Walker, Rob?
Well, for it really depends on the group that you have, because some players would abuse the extra bit of knowledge there, and some definitely would not. And really, it goes into, like you saying, an extended campaign where the people that you're interacting with, and like you said, the ones that read that extra bit of information were like, "Yeah, I gotta be really about this," but at the same time, they probably weren't abusing any kind of extra information.
Yeah, so knowing your table, kind of getting a feel for whether your players, even whether they don't intend to, whether they have a tendency to metagame. That's
right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it could be fun going forward.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. No. I think I agree with you, Walker. It really depends on the table, and I definitely agree in the sense that it depends more on the longer side of things, because Stephen well knows I don't really care for one shots. So like I think that it would make a bigger impact on like a longer campaign, an extended campaign, something that we play for several years and things like that.
Right. Yeah. Just a personal example of that. I sort of did a similar thing to Aaron. Granted, you guys got this information far after the fact, but in my campaign, that the rifts finally reopened to the other dimensions, and you didn't know what happened on that first night, but I wrote up the prologue to pieces of the book I was writing, and it covered that information. And I think after the fact, that made it much more interesting, at least to see it from an outside perspective, even though your characters never interacted with the characters involved in the prologue. You've seen that location, you've seen the things that come from the other side, and I think that made it a little more impactful of an opening to the campaign, especially since your characters had no idea what was going on for months before you finally learned something. But does anyone else have any other alternative methods of storytelling that you think would be interesting, that might add to a D&D or other RPG game?
I mean, I've got a couple. I in a science fiction game I ran a while back, I as a back end, I used the Stars Without Number faction system to move around about, I want to say 11 different factions fighting each other in this section of space, and I used all of the moves that happened every month in the game to write a 2-page long newspaper
Hmm.
about what was happening, and allowed that to be purchased by the players. Um, so that was another way of like saying, hey, there's this thing in world that if you want to get more information on what's happening, you can buy. Um, and that actually led to me creating a an entire stock market in my game that my players bought into and actually like began trying to manipulate the stock market to get more money
Hmm.
based on who they were backing.
Well, that definitely
Uh,
sounds like something that
yeah.
could be useful. I like the idea of the newspaper. Um, that's something that I think I've thought about. That it feels almost like a codex in a lot of video game RPGs. Is something that the
Mhm.
players can buy that or can run across that gives just a lot of information that they might not otherwise find. I like that idea. That seems like
Right.
a pretty natural way to do that too.
Yeah, and none of the articles were super long. They were just basically a paragraph with an ellipses at the end saying like, "There's more here if you want to like look into it."
See page
But
7. Yeah,
all of the important information is at the front.
yeah.
Oh,
That's a good idea. I like that. That's something I
Coming
could
up with
definitely.
ads was fun.
Yeah, the ads. Come to Wits End and buy
yeah.
the new copy of so and so's book. Yeah, that'd be a fun thing.
Oh,
For sure.
Core Aid medical devices.
mm.
Yeah, yeah, I like that idea. I
There's a
could
game.
go ahead.
Sorry. There's a game I was playing recently called Outer Worlds that does a wonderful job doing kind of sarcastic advertisements for absolutely everything. So if you're looking to do something like that, there's a great source to pull from.
Good to know. That's a resource for.
Borderlands does something like that too,
Yeah,
like the
yeah, I've seen
sarcastic
that.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
advertisement type stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
The more tongue in cheek it is, I think the easier players can swallow it.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. There's that sort of level.
There's
If
some
you
mixed
do it too
metaphors.
serious, then it's just gonna feel a little off. But if you do it too funny, gotta find the right line in there. I'm sure.
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
I've also done like when I was playing in person, actual physical props
Hmm.
that had puzzles and diagrams on them.
Mhm.
And I think that's another way of storytelling because this this etching along the exterior is a code that you can break, and you can learn another thing about the world that isn't necessary for story progression, but it adds context and depth to what other characters are doing and why things exist the way they do.
That's good. I like that for sure. And
Some
Yeah.
things that I know that other DMs do, and kind of a sense of storytelling is rather than doing, like you said, your standard D&D Matt Mercer form of like being the omnipotent ruler of the campaign.
hmm
The DM will actually roll like an NPC character and play with the party, so that instead of it being more of a party versus DM aspect or kind of like mindset, it's really the DM go like, and this NPC playing with their players, telling the story and like adventuring with them as like
hmm
someone in their shoes, more so than, and kind of guiding them that way, more so than actually like dropping the hints or then talking as
Right.
playing as like one-off NPCs type of thing, and in that kind of regard as well.
Yeah.
Carrying on as
Mhm.
a tag along minstrel.
Yeah.
Say it again?
That's fun.
Playing as a sort of tag along minstrel. He said. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've seen some RPGs where the game master is more of a following guide who plays with the characters, the other players that is, and then are the ones who adjudicate when that becomes necessary. So that is definitely something that you don't see a lot of in games like D&D, where the game master or dungeon master in that case is much more of the okay. I'm going to drop you in this place and see what you do, and I'm the one who knows everything. So that's definitely something I could see being interesting. I'd almost like to try running a shorter campaign, maybe give it a 3-month try and see how that goes for something like D&D, because that definitely adds a different element. Yeah,
It's definitely a fine line because you don't necessarily. I mean, obviously that player is still the dungeon master, and that
Right.
player is still, and the DM is still trying to guide the players onto their story that they're trying to tell while still playing a non-biased NPC, right? And so, yeah.
Yeah.
You can kind of play on that relationship a little bit, though, if they know your general style of being a game master. Is do they believe that everything that character says? Is that character just trying to mess with them? Are they trying to help them? Are they trying to hinder them?
That's a
There's a
big
lot
one
Right.
of,
too.
Right.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
you
you can
introduce
add a
a
lot of dimension to it.
Yeah, if you
A
introduce
lot
an
of times,
NPC
yeah.
that's like a scoundrel sort of character, the players are
Yeah.
probably not going to believe everything they say, and even though they might tell you something that's true that's really a hint, they might disregard it, they might not believe it as much as if it were just something coming from the Dungeon Master's mouth. So yeah, I like
Right.
that for sure.
Exactly. Not only
Like,
that, but I mean, a lot of storylines in D&D is, the big bad evil boss type of thing,
Mhm.
right? And so trying to thwart that person. And so a lot of times what I see when in this regard is when the DM is actually playing as an NPC, they're actually playing to infiltrate the party as an evil character, trying to sway the party doing things that this entity that they're actually trying to fight or face in the long run is actually like making persuasions on the group itself rather than maybe like a one-off NPC or other things like that the DM would generally throw in. And so it kind of has a long-term effect rather
Right.
than just a short-term change of
Right.
vision as in the group kind of a thing.
That's
You could,
good.
you could go the opposite direction. So that's in my mind like taking the GM and dropping them down to a more mortal level where you're mixing in with the PCs. But you could do the opposite, where you as the GM can also raise up the players and say, all right, so I've developed this, but like, what is this next part of the world that I haven't developed? Like, and this requires a lot of player trust. But if you've developed that trust relationship between players and GM, then you can offload some of that world building and allow them to start building something that they're also interested in.
So
And in terms
that's
of,
something that I do already, actually. Whether my players don't know it really too much, but
I
a
think I
lot
know
of
what
the
you're
things
talking about.
a lot of things that they do and kind of say and morph the world around them becomes quote unquote canon in the world around them. I have a lot of landmarks and a lot of like cities and things like that in regards to just populating the world itself, right? But not the lore necessarily kind of comes from the players as well, and something that I implemented along with that my players, I told them at the very beginning a year ago when we first started playing, is that they are going to be permanently added into the lore. Assuming all their players live through the end of the campaign, they will become demigods in my world and or lesser gods and so on and so forth. And the future players that I DM for have the option of worshiping my former players. And when they cast Commune or Divine Intervention or something like that, I will literally call up Steven for
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
say, hey, this new player is trying to contact you. You're their god. Like, do you answer their call?
We have a collect call from a certain cleric.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I kind of do the same sort of thing. I do the same sort of thing. Addis in my campaign, he's a saint. When he dies, players can worship him, and he can answer their call or not. Similarly, the other divine characters, if somebody runs across Rob, your character from my game, and they're looking for information on somebody, and they happen to run into the bar that you guys co-own, I'll send you a message and see if you give them information. If if there's something in particular that Elias would do or anything like that. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that you can do. And I see we've gotten a lot of good. We've had a lot of good discussion. We've been going on this topic for 20 minutes, which is actually longer than I anticipated for alternative storytelling. Yeah. So I'm pretty pleased with that. Maybe something we can come back to later if we think we have enough information or enough ideas to warrant a second segment on this in the future. But for now, I would like to jump to our away from the table segment.
I felt like we were going there anyway, given where that last discussion.
I mean, yeah, with all the props and things that you've been showing off, I think this is a great time to go away from the table. All right, so a little thing there. Cool. Awesome. Should still be able to hear our voices when that's on, I think. I have no idea. But we're back away from the table. We're now into the second segment of our show. Today's Away from the Table, we will be talking about finding your strength. Now, Fizzer, you've already shown off a few of your strengths. So, do you have any issue with going first?
Not really, no. I think so. I started. I think I'm the youngest DM here, which is odd because I think I'm also the oldest person in this group.
I'm getting old.
30's coming up on me. I started off as the GM. I didn't start off playing in games, and I began in the Cypher system, which is very different from D&D in that the GM doesn't roll dice, and it still feels weird to me to roll dice. So that shows how deeply that first experience can penetrate. But what the Cypher system in Numenera does well for entering GMs is it makes it really easy to come up with things on the fly. So I got to flex a lot of improvisational muscles really early, and to this day, I think I'm really good at rolling with ridiculous and out there player ideas that I had not expected, and rolling that into, okay, how would the world interact with this? There's no roll to decide that. I'll make something up, and most of the time players come to me afterwards and say, I can't believe that you thought that we would do that. It's like, yeah, crazy how I totally expected everything that you were going to do this session. That actually leads into I think my other like really big strength in running things as a GM. I adore running chaotic games. And I'm not saying like alignment chart chaotic. I'm talking like in that game where I had this vast faction system running. I had so many different plot lines running back and forth between different companies, spying on each other, sabotaging someone else, religion beginning, etc. That the finale was a combined heist, concert, tearful goodbye to a mother, and invasion, all at the same time. And because I was running it in a system that allows the GM to like jump between things super easy, I developed a bunch of muscles for doing a more cinematic system where all of the players were in different locations, and I was jumping between different scenes that only had a player in each one of them. And none of my players were left hanging for too long, so they got bored.
That's good. And we've already seen your props, which, by the way, as one of the few games that I've played in person, Walker's being the other, your props were absolutely, they definitely drew you into the world. The few props that we used in those one-shots. But those are all great things. Being able to improvise on the spot like that is definitely a skill that takes fostering. Knowing that the Cypher system definitely helps to foster that skill is something good to note for people who might struggle at it. Maybe take a look at the Cypher system. It's good to know.
It's definitely still got some crunch added to it. It's not like a purely narrative game, but it's D&D with a bunch of the GMing edges filed down. So I think it's easier for like a first-time GM to pick up.
That's good to know. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to volunteer for walking us through your strengths and maybe how you came across those skills?
Sure.
I can go.
All right, Rob, why don't you go?
Okay, never mind. I'll go. So kind of similarly, which I think is a mark of all good GMs, is of course kind of something that Fizzer said, is having the being adaptable, right? When I GM every game session that I go into, I have an end goal, right, that I want the players to reach or see or do, and I might have like some little tidbits of information that they receive in between. But I'm definitely not the type of GM that goes in with 5 pages written down and I follow each one of these pages, right? I basically say, let the characters do what they want to do and improvise on the spot. So a lot of my sessions, whether my characters know or not, are me improvising on the spot. More so than anything else. Of course, like some of the bigger things, like the big dungeon that you guys went into, like obviously that was my goal as a GM, was to guide you guys to that position. But and there are some things there, but I definitely think I improvise well. Something else that I think I do well is actually just world creation in general. I've created my entire campaign from the ground up, from its gods to its NPCs and to the landmarks and everything in between, right? And so that takes a lot of time for sure. And I continuously build things, add new gods, add new things to continue it. But I think I do a decent job at it. And I don't know. That's all I can think of right now.
Well, that's all good. That's all good. Any advice necessarily on how you like? Did you have a technique in getting better at that sort of world building stuff, or was it just mostly practice?
Honestly, it definitely wasn't practice. I'd probably say it's more of imagination than anything. Don't be afraid to think outside the box, and also don't be afraid. Don't think that you have to have everything built before you start playing necessarily. I guess if that means that's kind of what I was going on to previously. Is like my characters help me build that world. Right, I have the foundation, and I have I think I started you guys playing with you guys only with about six or seven like greater gods,
right.
But I've added tons since then, right? Because just thinking and things like that, and then you guys have added so much to the world in general to help me flesh parts of that out as well. And so like I think imagination definitely helps, and then don't be afraid to, as we said before, allow your players to help you shape like the world around you, I guess.
How did you come into like organizing all of that stuff? Because I have a bunch of issues trying to keep all of the information on my worlds straight.
A lot of Google Docs, a lot of Google Docs, a lot of maps, as my characters will know.
Yeah.
But there's actually a couple of websites nowadays that are made for that. So World Anvil, for one, is a great one. They lay everything out and actually prompt you with things too that maybe you might have not thought about. Give you prompts that say, "Hey, what about like what does this mean in your world, or how does this affect in your world, or like what do these different religions affect to each other in your world, and so on and so forth." And so that's another way to do it. Me personally, I started this 2.5 years ago. And so I basically started it with Word docs and kind of getting an idea, fleshing out my ideas on Word documents for each individual thing, and then picking up tools to help me actually draw the world that I saw fit, kind of a thing. So
I've still got some extremely bloated Excel documents.
I've seen those. Yeah. Jumping in on that, since I think my style is very similar to yours, Rob, with my strengths in particular. My organization, at least it used to be Google Docs. I've switched entirely over to OneNote, which again I started switching all that over 2 years ago and had Google Docs for a year beyond that. But OneNote in particular has been good. It's helped me organize everything exactly as I need it. And that's a real strength. I can find anything in about 30 seconds if I need to, based on what the players are doing and what's going on in the world. But I find my other strength in being a GM comes from my well, I guess it all stems from the imagination, but I have a passion, I guess you would say, for writing. I enjoy writing. I love that process. And so I tend to put a lot of that in my world. I write short stories about different parts of the world. I write longer stories about different parts of the world. And so when the players reach an area where I've written something about it, I find that that's a lot more of a rich place than it would otherwise be, at least for me. And to that end, improving in that process for me has been reading. I read 30 books a year, and not all of them are at all related to my campaign, but that doesn't matter. Reading and seeing how stories are kind of stacked together and how they work functionally, I think has made me a better GM than I was 11 years ago. Now, 11 years ago, I ran everything off the cuff. I didn't prep anything. I might know in my head where the story was going, but my friends from high school would tell you, yeah, he ran a 6-month Star Wars campaign, and everything was improv. And so I was good at that back then. And while I was a decent GM back then, I'd like to think I'm a good GM now. And the difference in that has been that instead of running everything off the cuff, I'm much more focused, and when I need to, I still can. But that focus has been a huge difference. So
professional improv actors do actually prep things.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
That's the secret.
Those jokes and whatnot, one-liners in movies where an actor supposedly ad-libbed it. Yeah, they ad-libbed it the first time, but most of the time it's not the first take that gets filmed. So something to keep in mind. And I definitely think that's where I shine as a GM, is in that sort of stuff.
It's great, and kind of in a similar vein there, I got my start with all of this DMing, tabletop gaming through storytelling, because me and a bunch of my friends back in high school were a bunch of fantasy nerds. We loved the books, we loved movies, we loved all kind of media with that, and we decided, the group of three of us, that we would write a book together. So we came together, we made characters for a book, we made a world for a book, and we started making a story for it, and we were writing it out. And then one of us realized we were basically doing D&D without playing the game part of it. And after we made the transition, we're like, this is so much better.
Yeah.
So that's how I got my start. And because of that, I always kind of go back to that of, I love the planning of the overarching big things as though you're writing a story.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I always do behind the scenes is I make storyboards with images that I find that I want to convey. I write scenes, I write little bits and pieces, not making it so it's, I know absolutely everything's going to happen, but I have, when you get to a certain point, you know you got to that point, you know basically everything that I'm trying to convey at that moment. And I really enjoy the storytelling aspect of that, where I know what I want to do and I've created it well, that I want what I want to convey. But in that same aspect, since we were trying to write as a group, it was an interesting thing because all of us were coming together to write it. So I very much enjoy blending players' backstories and kind of what they want to do into the overarching. And I think that's one of my strengths is, I know we didn't get too far in my campaign before I had to move away and we kind of got on the pause, but the tangled web that I have made between all of your characters, I am kind of proud of, honestly.
I think we were starting to see the edge of that, and of course Rob and I were playing brothers, which made it a little bit easier. But Mike's character, I feel like before he died, was before his character died. That is, I feel like he was heavily interweaved in that web. Yeah.
Him, Ryan's character on Shar was also very tightly woven in there. There was a lot that you guys gave me good bits and pieces that I love getting like just a little thing and just rolling. And I'd say that kind of leads to my other strength is I gained an appreciation for art early on from my parents. My mom was one of those art masterpiece teachers. She took us to all the museums, and I gained a really big appreciation for art in any form, and I consume it religiously, and I go out of my way to find it. And what I do is, if I find something, like I can write a story about that one image right there, I'll save that one image, I'll sit down, and I will write a world around that one little image that I found. And that lets me, in a sense, for D&D and tabletop gaming, I can go and say, that thing right there, I'm going to build a massive ass encounter. Like most recent one I think you guys saw was the mimic ship. I saw an idea for a mimic ship and was like, oh, this is going to be great. And I'm like, all right, who wants to be on the mimic ship? We're going to have a Skald, and they're going to be Duragar, and they're going to come out of here as slavers on the sea and try to get you, and this ship is going to try to eat you. And then you made friends with the ship, and it's going to go wander the sea.
Yeah, that ship was a fun encounter. Now that is a skill I do not have. I have not been one who has looked at arts. That's not been something that's heavily ingrained in me and my family. But I can see how that would be useful. I just have to close my eyes and think, and eventually something will come to me, and it's usually pretty good. But being able to go off of art is a nice skill to have, for sure.
Yeah, and it kind of changes up your repertoire because you could be looking at something entirely unrelated to what you were doing before, but it seems like a good idea, and it gets your brain kind of turning to kind of see how you can involve this in what you're doing right now. Maybe not right this second, but like, oh, if they go this way, I can definitely throw this in here.
Right. And kind of off of that, I guess you could say consuming media of any kind, whether it's art, whether it's song, whether it's movies, TV, books, finding inspiration where you can take it is good. The imagination is wonderful, but without any sort of inspiration, you're going to have a hard time coming up with something that is you as a GM. So
Yeah.
I guess my advice generally would be consume.
Tons. Yep.
All right. Any
Uh,
other last comments from people before we jump into roll initiative?
what I can do.
All right. I think we are going to jump into roll initiative. Hopefully, I'll fix the names this go around. I did not have them in the right place beforehand, but hopefully that will be better here in a second.
Okay, I think I'm back.
All right.
Yep.
I shouldn't have simulation in the background. I'm sorry.
It's all good. Science comes first.
Get her
All right. So we are into the third and final segment of our show today. This is the roll initiative segment. I think the names look good now. I think. Sorry about that. First show, there's bound to be some kinks. But today we are going to be doing the 5-minute design challenge, and this is where we will all need our d20s. So we're going to be rolling initiative, and the two highest numbers will pair together, and the two lowest will pair together. And so I don't have to close out of the full screen on Discord. We'll just have whoever's not in my group jump down to group 2 in the Discord we have. And once we're all set, I'll start the timer, which will show up on screen, and we'll have 5 minutes to design whatever we have. And I guess I need to pull up my tables too, as we're going to be doing this randomly as to what we're designing and what themes, and if we need to clarify anything before we get started, we can do that. So, without further ado, everybody, roll initiative. On par. Well, let's do this the old-fashioned way, 25 to 20. Okay, 20 to 15. Wow, great, guys. 15 to 10.
14.
You have what, Walker?
10.
10. All right. You okay? You both have 10. Fizzer, you have 10 as well. I rolled a 2.
I'm the
So-
highest.
Yeah. Actually, it's probably easier, Rob, if you just join with me because we have 2 10s. We might as well not make them roll off.
Sure.
We'll have Fizzer and Walker drop down to the next channel, and Rob and I will go ahead and stick here. So we'll see you guys in about 5 minutes once the timer goes off. Hopefully you've got that timer up. That's right. That's right. I should probably go for it. Yep. So I made a table that's got some things. I'm going to be rolling a d8 to figure out what we're making. The options are an NPC, a weapon, a potion, a set of armor, a ring, a spell, a shop, or a spell. It's on there twice. A shop or, let's say, a city. Why not? And we'll go ahead and roll a d8.
The city in 5 minutes.
Just a brief, what's the big thing about the city? All right, so we are doing, that was a terrible roll. Did not roll.
New Bork City.
We are going to be designing a ring, and let's go ahead and figure out what the item rarity is before we get started, just so we have an idea. D6. I added epic above legendary, so this could be like, something from the gods, that sort of thing. But let's see what we've got.
Oh boy.
A legendary ring. Let's see what we can create in 5 minutes. So we'll see you guys in just a few.
All right.
All right. And I got to quickly change the name here before we get started, because I had no idea who I was going to be partnered with, of course. All right, that looks pretty good. Except I need to flip them around. Great. I got to find a faster way to do this. That's all right. Okay, that looks good, and we'll go ahead and transition to that. There we go. Awesome. That looks pretty awesome. All right, and the timer starts in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we're designing a ring. What sort of class do we want this ring for?
First thing that I thought of was almost like a battle mage ring kind of a thing, like kind of taking an aspect from like Warcaster or something and forming it into a ring, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like that would be super strong and kind of on par for something legendary.
Yeah, legendary item. Giving. So are we thinking of like a mage who gets a ring that can turn them into a better fighter, or are we thinking like a fighter who can cast a spell through this ring and make themselves sort of a magical powerhouse? Which sort of way are we going with this?
I kind of thought of the first way, kind of making a mage a better fighter. That's what I thought in terms of Warcaster.
That's good.
You know?
That's good. So this ring. Let's see. It's a legendary item. It's going to cost about 50,000 gold pieces. It should be something that gives them bonuses to their attack and damage.
And even hit points, maybe.
Giving extra hit points. As playing a mage currently of some type, hit points are useful. Yeah. So maybe it boosts. Maybe it gives them like an avatar, something that like an outward shell, almost like power armor of a sort.
Like kind of like a shield, like not shield, but like almost like an armor bag.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Maybe it is temporary hit points. Maybe it's not. I like the idea of having temporary hit points. They're not used well enough in 5e. Yeah, so we have a ring that gives a wizard number of temporary hit points equal to let's see. Maybe it's a multiplicative value of their level. So like
2 times their current level or something.
Right. We could even do 3 times because a legendary item they might get at 15 or higher. That'd give them an extra 45 hit points. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
That's a lot at that level.
That is true. So let's go with 2 times their hit points as the first thing that it does.
15, your average fighter will be just now breaking like what 200
fighter
hit points
getting around 200 hit points. The wizard might be around 100, so you give him an extra 30. That's pretty good.
That's 130. That's really good.
Yeah. All right, so what else does it do?
Advantage on their con saves, for instance.
Advantage on concentration checks. Yeah. We should be writing this down. 2 times level hit points. Temp hit points. We have advantage on concentration.
And of course, to make you a battle mage or something, you'd have to gain like proficiency in like martial weapons or something.
Right. While you're wearing the ring, you get proficiency in all weapons. They probably won't need boost to armor class, especially with the hit points. Yeah, so proficiency in martial weapons. And they can use their casting modifier in attacking. And additionally, their weapon attack should be able to do some type of magical damage. So even if they're just using a base longsword, maybe their attacks do 6d6 force damage or something like that.
Yep.
All right, so that's good. I like that. Do we like the 6d6? Does that sound about right for a legendary weapon? 15th level?
15, something like that. 66, yeah, about right.
Well, okay, so if they're only going to get 1 attack per round, so yeah, 66 is probably right.
Yeah, that's about right.
Because they can cast spells that do much more than that at that level. So,
and plus, on even on terms of a fighter at that level, you'll be like a fighter 2 attacks.
Right. They're usually going to have enchanted weapons.
5 damage per round. Like, you get 2 attacks, so 50 total. So 66 plus your average.
Well, a fighter at that level gets 3 attacks.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Because
so it's going to be doing around 50 to 60 damage roughly.
Could be, yeah. 66 is probably reasonable, and force damage is nice. Not a whole lot of things are immune to that. All right, we've got 35 seconds. Is there anything else we want this ring to do? What else would fit with a battle mage?
No.
No, I'm about stuck on that. Huh. Maybe it gives them proficiency in athletics.
Yeah, sure.
All right, why not? Okay. Oh, and there we go. So, hopefully they'll hop back in. And let's get this back. Hopefully they'll hop back in their same places. Looks like it. All right.
We all good?
Yep. We were down to the wire. But we have a legendary ring. So, let's go ahead. You guys... why don't you guys go first? And then we'll debate and we'll see from there.
All right. So what we came up with was the legendary Ring of Twin Fate. So the idea behind this ring is that it is a powerful artifact meant to be something to make you something that you're not. The idea behind it is when you use this ring, it has one use per day. And what it does is it summons a clone of yourself that you can set one of your stats to 20. And other than that, it is entirely similar to you. So that means you have a clone of yourself that is you, but not quite you. You can use it to be an assistant that can, if you're smart, it's strong. If you're strong, it's smart. If you're smart, it's wise. Whatever you need in the moment. And this clone would last until you use it again or the clone is killed. So what does this clone have other than just the stats? Is when you use this ring, you only have to worry about one of your two people. And because of that, you can select the class of this thing. It's clone, so it has most likely the same spells that you would have, that you would know if you're using the same class. Otherwise, it has a reduced repertoire of spells. Other than that, its appearance is a small ring of hands reaching towards one another, grasp around an emerald that's cut, where if you look into the center, it seems to extend further and further and further into itself, almost going down until you see some kind of light emanating from the bottom. From where the light comes from, we're not entirely sure. Could be another dimension.
Fair enough. Well, that is a very solid showing. We focused on different things, which is interesting. You guys focused a lot on story and appearance and things like that. We focused a lot more on mechanics, which is interesting. So we have the Ring of the Battle Mage. This is a ring that, first off, grants its wearer, typically a caster of some kind, 2 times their level in temporary hit points. It gives them advantage on concentration checks, should they choose to cast a spell while wearing it. But the exciting part is it gives them proficiency in all martial weapons, and weapon attacks that they make with those weapons can use their casting modifier, and does an additional 6d6 force damage. And just for fun, we also gave them proficiency in athletics, because that feels about right if they're going to be a battle mage. They should be able to do some athletic sort of things. And while we didn't discuss what it would look like, we can't add anything after the fact. So we didn't discuss what it looked like or anything like that.
No, we focused almost entirely on functionality more so than anything else.
You're right. Yeah. We had very different focuses.
Yes, we did. That is very interesting. I look forward to future 5-minute design challenges. In the meantime, let's see. I had a straw poll ready for the choice. Who has the better homebrew? I'm going to go ahead and post the link in chat. And the options are Team A and Team B. The left half of your screen will be Team A, so Rob and I. The right half will be Team B with Fizzer and Walker. And the link is coming to your chat here in just a second. So, because we don't have a whole lot of people watching, the 4 of us will also vote on which they think is the better homebrew. And try to be objective. You can vote for yourself if you think that you are in the right. But if you think the other team's is cooler, that is acceptable as well. So let's go ahead and vote for ourselves, and we'll give it another couple minutes and see where things go, and which item will eventually be found in my world. In the meantime, I definitely think that was an interesting experiment. 5 minutes seems just about right. We were a little pressed for time, but we had about 40 seconds where we were trying to think if there was anything else we wanted this thing to do. And in retrospect, we probably should have talked about what it looked like.
Yeah.
It's definitely
Yeah,
not.
that was kind of one of the last things that we had thought of.
Yeah.
Walker definitely carried that part of it. I just love that infinity mirror aspect.
Yeah, yours sounds definitely like it's the path not traveled. What if your character wasn't raised by your mother, but by your father?
Yeah.
That's a very interesting thought experiment.
Went to
Elon versus Nail.
learn the sword rather than go to school or whatever.
Right. That's a very interesting thing. We've got 3 votes so far. So we'll wait for another one, see if we have anybody in chat who wants to take a vote as well. Otherwise, we have a clear leader at the moment with 3 votes. Hopefully we don't end up with a tie. Although if we end up with a tie, both of those are cool enough items that I will add them both to the world. So that's not something
mash
bad.
them together into the same ring.
Oh, that'd be...
Boy.
That would be...
Epic level.
So I rolled a 5 on the die. If I had rolled a 6, then that would be about right.
It's the ring of twinned battle mages.
Exactly.
Like you use it, you
God help
become
you.
a battle mage. It doesn't
Well,
matter what you were before.
We've got 4 votes, and as my screen is showing, we've currently got 5 viewers. And as the votes are currently skewed heavily in favor of Team B, I think we can call Team B the victor. So, the Ring of Twinned Fates will now be entered into my world. That was a fun challenge. I liked that. I think that went pretty well. And hopefully, those watching, I saw our numbers tick up and down a few times, but we had a good few viewers. Hopefully, everyone who watched enjoyed. I'm not exactly sure when our next session will be. That's going to have to be in flux a little bit right now as we sort of get things figured out. But I guarantee that whenever the original air date is, I will be rebroadcasting these shows every Sunday morning following the initial air date. So this show will be rebroadcasted next Sunday morning, probably at around 9 a.m. Pacific time. So if you miss something and you want to catch it later, you can do it there. You can also watch the VOD on Twitch. It should be available for 14 days because we are a young channel. So you have that long to catch up if you missed anything and want to go back over our discussion. There's also a chance I'll be posting these to YouTube at a later date. That's something I'll have to look into. But thank you all so much for being panelists in our inaugural show of the GM support group. I'm sure you'll be seeing these panelists' faces again in the future. Although we will likely be having others join us from time to time. We're going to try and keep things from 4 to 6 panelists. But if you're an experienced GM and you think you would have something interesting to offer to the discussion, I'll go ahead and post the email that you can reach us at in the chat as well. And that'll be available on the Twitch page if you want to come back later for that. In the meantime, thank you all so much for joining us. And we will see you in the next session of the GM's support group. Goodbye.
Ciao.
See you around.
Bye.